the funds. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning meeting of September 11th. First, the order of business is pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't know if any of you all watched any of the ceremonies today. It's, obviously 9/11 is an important, sad date in our country's time. So if you would, we'll take a moment of silence after the pledge to remember the victims of the towers. Okay. First item and only item tonight is Imagine Schools and a public hearing. The Imagine Charter School request to modify wait a minute, time out. We have two things. First, we need to approve the minutes. For Rita, she'll never let me out of here if I don't approve the August 14th minutes. Any additions or deletions or a motion to approve?
Move to adopt as presented.
Got a motion? And a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, like sign. They pass unanimously. Secondly, tonight is quasi-judicial. Would anyone who'd like to speak please stand and be sworn in ahead of time?
Craig, is your thing on?
You raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Resounding response.
Having completed that circle, we're back to the first and only item on the agenda tonight is the Imagine Charter School request to modify a condition of special exception use, approval of the Imagine Schools 4th Street facility. This is a public hearing, and John, if you'd take us through.
Thank you, Mr. Hamner. John McCoy with Indian River County. And this is a request from Imagine Schools to modify their condition regarding a left turn lane at their 4th Street facility. And we handled this application procedurally similar to the original one as far as the special exception procedures. We mailed out letters to the adjacent property owners. We placed an ad in the Press Journal, and we have received some calls from the residents around about the proposal. The site is located on the north side of 4th Street, just to the west of 58th Avenue. This aerial shows the surrounding properties. Again, shows 58th Avenue, 66, the proposed school site. You can see that there's residential community just to the west of the school, but the preponderance of the residential area is east of the subject facility. This is a layout of the phase 1 that's proposed for the facility. You can see where the classrooms are at. There's a single access point to 4th Street, and once you get onto the site, the proposed bus drop-off and parent/pickup and drop-off is segregated on site, and there may be more conversation about bus drop-offs and pickups later in the evening. With the phase 1 improvement, the only improvement tied to the phase 1 certificate of occupancy is a westbound right turn lane at the entrance for the subject site and a sidewalk on 4th Street. For phase 2, there are additional classrooms that are added that are labeled on the slide, and then additional parking as well. And that would essentially take the enrollment from about 500 to about 750 students. The improvement that was tied to the 4th Street certificate of occupancy is an eastbound left turn lane at the entrance on 4th Street. And that was a condition placed on the application. As far as the timing of phase 2, that's what's really changed in this whole equation, is phase 2 is anticipated to come on board much sooner than it was originally contemplated, at least by staff. And I think the Planning and Zoning Commission and Board of County Commissioners, when it was talked about being phase 2, we thought that would be much more remote in time. And due to the applicant's success, it appears that that's going to be much sooner in time. It's actually commensurate with their phase 1 CO. So the two will be essentially at the same time. And that when they found that out, when the applicant found that out, they came back and said, look, we're going to probably end up doing phase 1 and phase 2 simultaneously. We need to readdress this condition. And that's essentially why we're back here before you today. And the applicant submitted a proposal to modify that condition and proposed up to 2 years of monitoring, to conduct a study, to use law enforcement during the interim as traffic control, and to post a financial security for design and permitting and construction. And in the staff analysis, the applicant's proposal is attached as attachment 1 to the staff, so you've got their proposal in writing. The staff and the applicant differ a little bit. If a left turn lane is to be constructed, the staff feels it ought to be more expeditiously, and I'll point out to you sort of where and why we don't, or we have the differences. Staff doesn't feel that there's any monitoring or study necessary, and that's really for 2 reasons. One is in the applicant's proposal, they're not putting out a threshold or a course of action in their proposal. And the staff is relatively confident that if you continue to monitor the situation, it'll be the same as when it came before the Planning and Zoning Commission before, that the applicant will not trip the threshold for a left turn lane based on the numbers in the code. So without different thresholds, it's probably not worthwhile to monitor and conduct a study, because we think we're going to end up at 2 years at the same place we were at when it came before you all before. So that's the reason we differ on those particular points. As far as the use of law enforcement as an interim traffic control, staff finds that acceptable. As far as posting security, we have a little difference there. The applicants indicated they would post security for the design, construction, and permitting of the improvement, and we want to take that 1 step further. We want to also include either the right-of-way acquisition or the culverting of the 4th Street ditch on the south side of 4th Street in order to get that turn lane in. And the reason we want that financial security included is so that it's a financially viable project if it needs to come to fruition, because without that, the financial guarantee is not complete enough to cover the improvement. And the left turn lane would essentially be 2+ years out, the 2 years of monitoring plus the study. Staff wants to cut that time frame down to 1 and say, if you're going to go ahead and build a turn lane, let's get it done within a year. From the standpoint of construction, it could be done within that year. And that gets us to the staff's recommendation. The staff does recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that approval be granted to modify that left turn lane condition with the conditions as recommended by staff in the staff report. And you all have that, and I won't summarize that further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. So basically what we're here for tonight, they want to come, phase 2 is coming faster than expected. They want to move from 500 to 750 students, add the buildings within the coming year. Phase 2 was tied to a left-hand turn lane being put in place. They don't object to the left-hand turn lane. The problem is county right-of-way to make it fit. Is that the case? No, basically what you're saying is nobody objects to the left turn lane. It's just making it fit, and who's going to pay to make it fit.
Some of those are the issues at hand, yes.
Are there other issues than that?
I think the timing would be the other issue.
Oh, whether it's 1 year or 2 years.
Yes.
Okay. But the monitoring, you all believe that because the county doesn't trip the minimums and didn't trip to begin with, other than what we felt like up here is the flow, and then the Board of County Commissioners felt the flow on the traffic side, that whether it's 1 year or 2 years, that's why the monitoring is, you don't care about monitoring, you think it's going to be the same, and so we just need to deal with the right-of-way issue. Is that the big issue?
Staff is confident that, the monitoring would probably end up in the same place at the end of the monitoring as we were at the Planning and Zoning Commission. Okay. So I think that's correct, yes.
Okay.
Where do you think that place is going to be?
That they're going to be short of the code-required threshold to construct a left turn lane.
So basically what you're saying is, 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, you're still not going to see a requirement for the left turn lane?
That's what we believe.
Based on
yes.
traffic?
That's based on
code.
Peak hour traffic, though, right? And peak hours between 5 and 6.
Chris?
Yes, Chris Moore, Assistant Public Works Director for County. Yes, that would be based on a peak hour traffic flow, left turn volume coming into the site. That is what the left turn threshold is actually based upon, is the peak hour. Peak
It's not
season.
3 or 4 o'clock in
We're
the
not
afternoon. I mean, when the school lets out or picks up, it's time. It's 5 or 6 o'clock.
Right. They look at the morning peak hour and the afternoon peak hour, whichever one is the greater. And they calculate the left turn volume that will occur during that time, or they forecast what it would be. And if it exceeds the county threshold, which in this case is 35 lefts per hour, then they determine that a left turn lane would be warranted. In this case, they were much lower than the threshold, but that left turn lane condition was imposed by the board as a condition of their special exception being granted.
I think what she's asking, though, is that when the school lets out, for the hour that school lets out, their peak hour, what would the traffic be?
They would not meet the threshold for a left turn.
Even during what would be their peak hour, not necessarily...
That's correct. This is a left turn turning into the site from eastbound on 4th Street.
So that would be
turning left.
morning traffic then, that would be using that
Well,
eastbound left turn lane.
it could be a large number, depending on the traffic circulation. It could be a large number in the morning or the afternoon.
Right,
Because
parents picking up
parents would be
children.
picking up and using that driveway regardless of the.
So with 750 students, you still do not feel that it will trip 35 left turn lanes?
left turns in and
Left
out.
turn movements in the peak hour.
Then it
would be less
must
than-
be all be right turns in and out.
Exactly. And when the modeling was done, it showed that most of the traffic would be coming from the east, from 58th Avenue, rather than from the west on 4th Street.
Now, is that based on the current road grid as it is, or is this based on the completion of 66th Avenue south to Oslo? Actually, well, you're doing 66 in 2 phases, 60 to 16th, and then 16th south. So now, let's look at a couple of years from now when you have 66 done all the way to at least Oslo, and we've got the east-west traffic on 4th Street, we've got the north-south traffic coming on 66, avoiding 58th and 60 and using 4th Street. Do you still anticipate, when you look at that scenario, how this grid is going to look in 3 or 4 years? Do you still feel at that time that we will not trip that left turn?
Yes, we do, and the reason is because even if the paved connection on 66th Avenue is made, still a much greater number of cars would be coming from the east than from the west, because if you look at the map and the layout of the homes and where the development is, it's mostly from the east and from the north, and they would tend to come down 58th Avenue rather than back through Pine Tree Park in that area.
The school district probably has, I guess, an idea of the demographics. Is that right, Lenore? Who's going here? Do you all know who you've lost?
We know how many.
We have a new school board member, soon to be retired, Lenore Quimby down here. We have to ask her, put her on the hot seat while we can. Do you know the demographics as to where, I mean, are they mostly east of 58th, or do you know?
Yes. We did see a memo, I haven't seen it in a while, but a large number of students from actually Osceola, which of course is east, a large number from Glendale, which is east. I don't recall any students really from the west. There were a few
North
from-
of 60 or
A few
anything?
from Liberty, from the north, but the large numbers were definitely from the east.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, Chris, is there any future plans of making Fourth Street enlarged or modified later on? I mean,
Yes, it is in the county's long-range plan, the
Right.
25-year plan to pave and widen 4th Street, but is not in our short-term plan, our 5-year capital improvement program. There is no project to widen, I shouldn't have said pave, I meant widen 4th
Widen,
Street
yeah.
in that area.
at that point, you'd have to cover that culvert or whatever?
Right, we would either have, we would be faced with the same decision that Imagine is with, and that is to either move the road to the north and be forced to buy right-of-way from people, from existing property owners, or move it to the south and culvert the drainage ditch.
And that
there-
time frame is 10 years, 15, 20?
It's 13 years, Mr. White. I wanted to mention that to you. Once the job gets placed on the 25-year plan, once it gets placed in the 5-year
Right.
plan, there's a 12 to 13-year time lapse if
Move on.
it's funded.
Chris, looking at the project, because I ride by there quite often, they've got a fair amount of space from the road to their property line. I mean, visually, it looks like to me a left turn lane fits. Now, obviously, if they're doubting it, or with the county's requiring them to pick up more right-of-way, then physically it must not. Can you tell, I mean, how close are they to fitting on a left turn lane? I mean, space-wise, it looks like to me it's close.
Yeah, immediately in front of the site and to the east, there's an adequate amount of right-of-way.
That's the right turn lane. The only question is the left turn lane.
Right, but as you move west away from the site, and the reason we have adequate right-of-way there is we've already acquired from this old subdivision, and to the east, we've already acquired that right-of-way. As you move to the west, which is where the eastbound left turn lane would be extending,
right.
There's only 30 feet of canal right-of-way and 30 feet of road right-of-way. And 30 feet of...
They only have 30 feet of their front property left? I'm talking about their frontage?
No, there's only 30 feet of road right-of-way as you move west away from the site. So in order to build a 3-lane road and then transition down to a 2-lane road, you would have to acquire an additional 50 to 70 feet of right-of-way in order to come up with the 80 to 100 feet of right-of-way that you need to build a road.
Is the right-of-way we need from north to south or from east to west? I thought it was east to west.
Right.
I mean, they're talking about right-of-way on their own property, so...
No, I'm talking about to the west, away from the site. You'd have to buy right-of-way on the north side of 4th Street, to the north of where the existing 30 feet of right-of-way already is.
Isn't that a vacant lot now?
All right.
Why don't you put that
Maybe
I have an exhibit that shows the
maybe we ought to
right-of-way proposed.
Maybe we ought to see have the applicant and the applicant's engineer explain this to us.
Try to explain it.
Now, yes, sir.
If I may.
Right.
Put the overhead on.
Brian Good with Kimley Horn and Associates. If I may, just answer Mr. Hamner's question, we brought some exhibits that delineate the widening, the existing right-of-way and the proposed right-of-way that's needed along the 40.
Can we get them on the overhead?
The reason I was asking, Chris, is this is not a stacking problem. This is a width of road problem. So they have the linear footage east and west that they need, but they've got to get more wider.
They have the right of way that they need from immediately in front of their site and to the east.
Okay.
It's as you move west away from the site that they don't have adequate right of way.
If you look at the aerial on the overhead, you can see the sidewalk that's just north of the sort of the pink left turn lane. If you extend that sidewalk to the west, it would be a sort of a similar right-of-way need for that same.
I'm not sure we're all talking about the same thing yet. Tell me how much space they need from the driveway to the west in order to stack the cars that they're talking about. Forget the width of the road, just the linear length that they need to stack cars.
The minimum stacking queue length and stacking that the county has is 330 feet. That's the minimum left turns from the project driveway.
So the right turn lane is 330 feet as depicted?
Unless the county traffic engineer grants a deviation, the minimum length from the driveway to the east for the right turn lane would be 330 feet. And then from the driveway to the west for the left turn lane, before you could start transitioning back, would be 330 feet as well.
Okay.
And how much space do you have that I'm looking at?
Essentially, if you were referring to the width of the existing right-of-way along the frontage of the site, the applicant had dedicated a sufficient right-of-way width along their frontage to provide 100 foot of roadway right-of-way, just immediately along their frontage of their site. If you look at the first exhibit that says Alternative 1, between the Project Drive and 58th Avenue, there's 80 feet of existing right-of-way. That's what's out there today, 80 feet of roadway right-of-way.
Wait a minute, slow down. Between the Project Drive and where?
And 58th Avenue, there's 80 feet of existing roadway right-of-way. When you look along the applicant's frontage of 4th Street, immediately adjacent to their frontage, there's 100 foot of roadway right-of-way. The constrained areas are when you go to the west, and that's what you were speaking to, Mr. Hamner. The parcel to the west, immediately to the west of the project site, there exists 30 feet of roadway right-of-way. So you can see in this exhibit, to maintain the county's minimum 80-foot roadway right-of-way, we're depicting 50 foot of roadway acquisition that needs to take place from that single parcel, the parcel that I have a number 1 on.
You say begin widening, don't have this in the overhead, you say begin widening?
Yes, sir.
Is that 330 feet? How far out is that?
It's a little bit longer than 330 feet, because what sets
Then
that
you have
point-
you have a little red angle here that looks like the lane itself, and that fits in front of your property. Okay.
This is 300 from that point.
Right here.
Right here to here.
Okay.
330 feet.
And that looks like, to me, it fits.
It does, but you can't just cut a 90-degree angle. There's requirements
Okay.
for roadway transition based upon the transition width and the speed of the road picks the length of transition that's required.
Right here.
So you're going way past 61st Avenue.
From here
Yes, sir.
to there.
So you have to get into this property in here.
It's like,
It's from here, this isn't the
it goes to like right there, so the problem.
Those are the ones that right-of-way acquisition are being
what I-
indicated
Right.
to be needed from.
Duh.
And what's the progress on that?
What is the progress? I'll allow the applicant, if the applicant would like to speak on the progress of the right-of-way acquisition.
Do you have some of it already or possible?
Christian Cascone, 904 Janmar. I'm the Director of Development for Imagine, and you have to forgive the hat. I had a little surgery this week, so apologize for
Very
that.
impressive, though. It says NASA, right? I think.
Makes me look
Unless
smarter
you're
than I
sitting
am.
upside down and it says something else.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot we're going to discuss tonight about this with regards to the right-of-way specifically. I'll try and keep the answers as direct and as tight as possible. We've contacted all 3 of the property owners, and we got, and I quote, I don't even want to discuss it. So they won't even set up a meeting with us. Specifically, I knew of 2 landowners that don't even want to broach the subject at all. Absolutely not interested in selling right away. So we have made that effort.
Thank you.
Pretty straightforward answer, at least.
So, and the reason why Mr. Cascone indicated 3 property owners is 2 of the parcels that right-of-way acquisition is required from are owned by the same person.
Which
So,
2?
Parcel 3 and 4, you see where there's a 3 with a circle and a 4 with a circle? Those are owned by the same individual. But they're 2 separate tax ID numbers. Continuing on, you can see that we're showing to not require enclosing the sublateral canal that resides to the south side of 4th Street, we're requiring 50 foot of right-of-way from 4 parcels, 3 owners. The second exhibit that's behind the first exhibit
You're asking a lot, Brian.
is a deviation of the alignment, and the alignment is deviated to utilize the right-of-way that exists from Anywhere Farms Water Control District. Adjacent to the 4th Street right-of-way, Anywhere Farms Water Control District has 30 feet of sublateral canal right-of-way. This alternative encloses that canal for approximately 1,200 linear feet, allowing the roadway improvements to be slid further to the south and lessening the burden or the encroachment on the properties that reside to the north. Even with this sliding of the corridor and closing the canal, it doesn't mitigate right-of-way. It reduces it, but it does not completely mitigate the need for right-of-way. Based upon sliding the road over and enclosing approximately 1,200 linear feet of the canal, we've indicated that you would need
20 feet.
20 feet of right-of-way from the same 3 parcels that were previously discussed in alternative 1. So I don't want to give the misconception that the alternative is acquire right-of-way or enclose the canal. That's not the option. You would still have some measure of right-of-way acquisition to take place, even if you went through the expense of enclosing 1,200 feet of the canal.
Have you spoken to New River Farms?
I personally have not, Mr. Fletcher.
So we don't know if that's an option.
In the past, the district has allowed.
They've been very reluctant.
I mean, for instance, Anywhere County has just completed enclosure of approximately 2,500 linear feet of sublateral enclosure on Oslo Road between 27th Avenue and Old Dixie. So it's not as if this is the first arrow.
And Chris said that in the Board of County Commissioners meeting that when we widened 4th Street to add the left turn lane at 66, that they were going to have to culvert that canal down there anyway.
That's correct.
So there shouldn't be a problem.
Right. In most cases, the farms will work with us as long as we design it correctly and
They're going to want
provide the
extra
proper
size
size pipe. They'll work with
David's
us.
not going to be happy.
Historically, the only additional request that the farms has placed upon an applicant is if the enclosure is deemed significant, 1,000 feet would be deemed significant. The farms has made a request to evaluate and provide compensating historical basin storage for the volume that's lost within the sublateral. Then the applicant would be have the onus of providing that same storage in a stormwater facility elsewhere, such that the basin storage isn't diminished with an enclosure of this size. That's historically been the only additional request.
Do we have any Murphy Act easement on this, on 4th Street? Any easements there for that, the Murphy Act?
There may be some. I'm not certain.
Excuse me, Bruce, you wanted to reply about the farms?
Well, I wanted to address Mr. Wick's comment. The part of the reason that we haven't approached the district yet is because even if they have permitted it, financially it's not feasible for us. Mr. Mora will tell you it's costing the county $500 a foot, and at 1,200 feet that'd be $600,000. The applicant was willing to put up, and is still willing to put up, the $350,000 it would take to construct and design, permit, and construct the turn lane, but not to culvert the canal. It would be, they would give up phase 2 instead of doing that. They don't have that kind of funding. So you guys have hit on all the main topics right now, and you've identified the problem. The applicant is still willing to pay for the turn lane, not able to or financially willing to do the right-of-way. However, in the interim, and Mr. Wilson has a presentation to make, we're willing to put up the money for the turn lane when the county gets around to culverting the canal or whatever it does, because you say it's in the plan. It'll have our money to build the turn lane. In the meantime, we're willing to have a traffic policeman there morning and night. We can fund a traffic cop for 50 years for the price it would take to culvert that canal, more. And we're willing, and we think that. And to be honest with you, to be honest with you, we think that would absolutely protect the safety of these children. Having a traffic policeman there is absolutely going to be
better than
a turn lane. I will argue that till I turn blue. The key to this is what John and Mr. Morris said. It doesn't matter when we do the monitoring; it's never going to meet the threshold. So why put the burden on this applicant to pay the $600,000 extra to culvert the canal when the county's going to do it in a period of time? I mean, that's the bottom line.
There you go, being a real.
They have the county 4th Avenue. I mean, 4th Street is going to have a lot of headaches when 66 goes in, and when they cut through, they're going to end up. I mean, the people that don't want to sell now, and this is down the road, they either take a row of houses out or they're going to go to the canal. I mean, there's no choice when you go down that road. So, my problem with this is I'm having a little heartburn with the fact that I was one of the people in favor of this left turn lane, and I'm still in favor of a left turn lane. But I will admit I agree with the thing about the officer. I'm having a little heartburn about us because the county doesn't have the right-of-way. We're going to force them into this and a huge amount of right-of-way. And I'm not sure, even though I know we've done this in the past in smaller amounts, I'm not sure that's the county's, our responsibility. I mean, I'm not sure it's the applicant's responsibility. So I'll tell you, I mean, I'm torn here. What I was wondering when I looked at this distance from what I saw, the red turn lane, what appears to me without the transition, is if we put a turn lane in, fine, let's stack 6 cars or change the stacking requirements, put it on their property, put the law officer out there and move ahead. If you want to, you can fit a turn lane of some sort in there. It may not be the world's best, but at least it will work if that would help the traffic.
Standard length, but
So that's what, Chris, I asked John to ask you to look into that. So
The cause could pass by anyway.
Yeah.
Right, and what we're saying is even if with a very reduced storage of vehicles, we cannot fit one in, just boxing one in as you suggest, because.
But I mean, can you get 3 cars in there?
No, you won't be able to, because even if you built enough storage for just one vehicle, you still have to transition the road back to a 2-lane paved road from a 3-lane road, and that's what takes all the distance that you're seeing with these red lines on the north side. So it's impossible to just box in a turn lane and have it be a standard Green Book AASHTO compatible design. You would be breaking all of the design rules, and this is a public thoroughfare.
In my life, so that doesn't bother me as much as it probably bothers everybody else. But I mean, the reality is for us is that regardless of the feeling of the surrounding property owners with the school is there. The school is in place, and the school is going to have 500 students. The question is whether with or without this, you add the 250 students. So nobody's going to say no school. So the school's here. And the fact that we're not triggering their turns by your standards, we force the turn lane, not engineering. And so that's why I think that, I would be more in favor of letting them put the money up for the turn lane. Whenever the county gets right away, they can put it in. We'll put a police officer there until it's done and be done with it. But we haven't heard from the applicant yet, but I was in a hurry. But that's funny. Just because we force this, so that's how I feel.
I have a question.
But go ahead.
What about sidewalks? How much are we requiring from them in the way of sidewalks to the west?
Not to the west. They are required to build a sidewalk from their site to the east to tie into the existing sidewalk coming back from 58th Avenue.
I think. Go for it. I voted against this before, just basically on there's no bicycle paths from the west going in there. There's no access and I would think if this day and age where people are going to have to get to the school, and we're encouraging people to bicycle or walk to school within areas, we should be providing bicycle paths for them. So, I don't know if this is an order or this is a time.
That's all right. We need to let the applicant make their conversation talk.
But why build a school if you can't get there by a bicycle?
Right. All right. I think what we better do is unless you all have specific questions of staff, and we need to go ahead and let the applicant put in their presentation if they have one, and then open this up for public discussion. I've seen a lot of nodding and shaking of heads, so everybody I'm sure has an opinion. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Charlie Wilson. I live at 1057 6th Avenue in Vero Beach. Since Mr. Keating isn't here to entertain you with PowerPoint presentation, I have one myself so that he won't feel out of place. However, I probably won't go through the whole thing that we had planned, simply because I think we have identified clearly what some of the issues are. So if you don't mind, I'll hit a couple of the highlights, but I'll try and run through it quickly if we can get this done.
Charles, it says you're live.
We have a 3-minute time, don't we? No.
Do we have a 3-minute timer?
That's the city, I'm sorry.
Okay. Just to kind of bring you up to date quickly on Imagine what's going on. The construction is moving along well. We've had a tremendous success from the community, tremendous cooperation from the staff and from the county commission, and we've been working together to put together a good school that people can be proud of. Right now we have almost 450 kids in school. They're happy, they're having a great time, they're smiling, even though they're having to suffer through a temporary site for a little while. And I can tell you, if I could start this, they would tell you that they were very thankful for all of you for doing this. You're right, we have moved this up because it's market driven, and families are in droves demanding to get what this school has to offer. Just a quick reminder of the county commission. As you know, we went through this planning and zoning meeting. County commission then added a left turn requirement that we have discussed the traffic studies, and as you know, there were some concerns from this board and from the county commission on 4th Street. And we share those same concerns, and we haven't forgotten those concerns. However, when we tried to agree to this left turn lane, there was a specific amount, and we thought we had a good plan. And frankly, what's turned out is it's just draconian. It's just it's not possible to meet that requirement. So with Imagine Schools, what we had considered was we were requesting a change in that to be able to give us more options. Because frankly, there are other options that we wanted to offer, and you alluded to some of them. Number one is we feel that police officers or safety officers on duty during those times when schools comes in and out makes life safer for everyone.
The second thing is as they've mentioned, we have agreed that the $350,000, if you listen to the tape of the county commission, you can hear that that's what we agreed to, but that became over $1 million. And this isn't something that you can raise the price of. This comes from books and food and computers and desks, because there's only so much money that goes into a school. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you that wasn't discussed earlier is we've also agreed to to recommend something else, and that is that we simply don't allow left-hand turns. We have the ability to control our ingress and egress into the school, and for the price of a $50 sign and a police officer that gives tickets for people turning in left going into the school or making them come around and go to 58th Street and come back and get in line like they're supposed to, we can alleviate the need for the left-hand turn lane altogether. And as Mr. Barquette mentioned, that $50 alternative to the over $1 million alternative is certainly attractive. And we believe we do this enforcement in other schools. The other schools in the county do not have those no left-hand turn lane requirements, or no left-hand requirements, and I think that it's very clear to us and very clear to the people that do this in the many other schools that Imagine runs, that we will be able to completely alleviate the need for the left-hand turn altogether. So it is my request that you assist us, because frankly, the alternative is we just simply cannot build Phase 2. And that's very problematic for a number of reasons. Number one is there's 300 kids that want to go to school, 300 parents that want to put their kids there. The second is that you've got a school that goes K through 5, and then all those kids, the fifth graders who then want to go to the 6th grade, have to go back somewhere else. And then they can't go to 7th grade, and they can't go to the 8th grade to then feed into the charter high school. So it ends up creates a hole in the ability of students to transition from kindergarten through through high school using a good opportunity to be in the charter school. So if there are any questions, and there's a very long presentation that I will spare you to answer all those questions, but it does answer the safety problem. Safety is job one for us. We know it's job one for you, and we just simply need additional options, and there could be other options in the future that we can study. So thank you.
Okay. Any questions of Charlie or Bruce, either one? Richard?
Is it possible to have a U-turn? Is there room for a U-turn? Like he suggested, sort of a Michigan left turn, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. That was Minnesota.
I think it's Miami.
No, the roadway would be too narrow to allow you to turn.
So might be easier to get.
Does the idea of the no left turn, is that something that you think is feasible?
As long as there's a police officer there to enforce it, yes. If it were just a sign with no law enforcement, no.
I know you say it works for everybody but me, right? Okay. Anything else, Bruce? You want to hold open? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Anybody on this side that cares to speak? And then we'll...
Good evening. My name is Jeff Brewster. I live at 360 Farley's Court, which is directly across the street from the Imagine Schools project.
Thanks, Jeff.
Do you have one for the record?
I'll give you mine when we're done, or I'll give you one.
She needs one for the record.
We'll give her one. Okay.
I put together a few items that I wanted to go over on the overhead briefly, and say a few things. First thing is I was against the school to start with. I can't do anything about that now because it's over there. What I can say is that they agreed to put this turn lane in as part of receiving their special exception, and that they should still have to put that turn lane in. They didn't have to accept that condition, and I think they should be held to that condition, because they did get their school and they did put it in. If they want Phase 2, then they need to put the turn lane in. The letter that I got from the county, I wish it had a little bit more information in it. I thought it was a little bit vague about what exactly Imagine Schools was looking for, and that's why I got it on the top. A lot of my neighbors called and said, well, they're just going to change the turn lane a little bit, they're going to add something to the right or move it over. They didn't have any idea that, there was looking at monitoring and possibly canceling the left turn lane, which I feel is the ultimate goal of Imagine Schools, is to not put that left turn lane in, period. I looked at some of the information. I talked with Chris Mora. I talked with Jim Davis. We got a copy of the traffic study that they used to formulate their original traffic plan, and based on elementary schools, which I have attached on the second page there. And it's all based on busing. Imagine Schools doesn't have any busing. So if you take a traffic study that's based on busing, and now you're going to take 750 kids and put them in cars and send them to school, the traffic study that they used for all their information is irrelevant. It doesn't. It's not based on fact. The third page back talks is out of their traffic study, and it talks about peak hour cars in the morning and peak hours in the afternoon, and 700 based on 750 students. And we took that information. Chris Moore had someone from the county go out to where Imagine Schools is currently located out at the church there on 60, and they did a traffic count from 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, counted 306 inbound vehicles and 251 outbound, and then the afternoon counts are there, which is not even close to what Imagine Schools and their traffic engineer estimated as what was going to be happening. We took some of those numbers, put them on a spreadsheet, showing they're having a current enrollment of 433 students, going to 750 students. Looked at the inbound traffic count that Chris Moore's department took at 306, increased that based on the student ratio going from 433 to 750, which then turns it into 530 trips in the morning versus 121 trips, which is on the traffic study, which is a 438% error. So when I look at the information and listen to Chris Moore and everybody talk and say that this left turn lane is never going to be required, I don't believe it. I want to be able to access my home same way I used to, and I shouldn't be impeded from access in and out of my property, whether it be at 8 o'clock in the morning or 3:30 in the afternoon. I think based on the information on the traffic count currently going in and out of that school, that the queue distance for the right turn lane into the school ought to be reviewed, and that right turn lane probably ought to be extended all the way out to 4th Street. I drove around to some of the schools in the county, out to Sebastian River and up to Gifford, and my daughter goes to the high school and even over to Masters where my son goes, and in the afternoon the queue line is enormous, whether you're turning right, left, or what you're doing. And to say that 750 students are going to come to school in 121 cars is ridiculous. I don't know of any car that's driving into the Imagine School right now where they're attending that's got 7 students packed into the car. It's just not going to happen. And it's going to affect my way of life, where I live, because they are directly across the street from me. I certainly think that the taxpayers also should not be burdened with this expense to put this turn lane in down the road. Imagine Schools agreed to have the turn lane to start with. They should have to put it in with no additional burden to the taxpayer. I don't want to pay to obtain right-of-way for them. They knew initially when they accepted the exception that the right-of-way was not available and it would have to be obtained. And I can't believe that they thought that the county was going to obtain that right-of-way for them. In closing, I'd like to say that if they can't put the turn lane in because it's cost prohibitive, they never should have accepted that clause to start with. And if they can't put it in because of funding, then they need to just not put in phase 2.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Chris, do you agree with the numbers and the calculation he just did?
We did conduct traffic counts at their temporary site at Central Assembly Church, and Jeff is right. The counts that were taken were about double what they had.
The in and out is down 4th Street, not in and out of the property, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
Right, exactly. And there are other uses on the Central Assembly site. There's a church, there's a daycare center, there's a radio station, 91.
This is not 4th Street. This was.
We took it at their temporary site at Central Assembly Church,
right.
just to compare what the accounts were currently at the for the school use versus what they had forecasted in their traffic study. And we were coming up with about double. But again, there are other uses on that site. We didn't do an origin destination study to see who was going where. We just took a count to see what they had.
This is with about half the students that they're projecting, right?
Yeah, I don't know what their current enrollment is exactly, but
I think Jeff said 430.
Mr. Brewster, do you have the number of the current count?
My understanding is 433.
We need to put it on record.
I think the Imagine Schools people could verify that for sure, but I was told 433 students. I also requested the demographic information for all of the students from the school board. They're currently assembling that information for me. They said it would take them 4 or 5 days to get that information together.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else in this half care to speak? Nobody over here? How about over here? You can go to the mic right. There's a left and a right here. We're very liberal.
I don't know my left from my right. My name is Ed Hendrickson, and I live at 440 61st Avenue. I would have to say right now, you did a very good job. And I do agree 100% with him, because I also did a traffic count last Friday morning, and there was 300 cars that I counted between 7:30 and 8:30. And that's an awful lot of traffic to be putting on 4th Street. It's not big enough. I just hope that they have to put the left turn lane in. I don't want to have to pay for it out of my tax dollars either. Thank you.
Mr. Hendrickson, a question. How do you feel about no left turn lane going in there? I mean, no left turn, period.
It sounded very nice, but the whole problem there is you're going to back traffic up onto 58th. You're going to back traffic up on 4th on the other side of 58th, because people are going to go across to come around. It's not going to work. It's not going to work unless there's another option too. The traffic light at 4th and 58th right now, if you're heading northbound, there is no left-hand turn arrow, and something will have to be addressed at that point too, because otherwise you're going to.
That's true, there isn't.
Very good point.
There is no arrow,
it's true, there isn't.
and it's going to back traffic up there too. So it's going to be a headache, any way you look at it. But I still think that they should put that left turn lane in. This is what they agreed to. They knew the problems before they bought the property, and quote unquote, this is just a little joke in a way, is that people can't complain when the airport was there and they bought their house. Well, I bought my house, there was no school. So I think everybody there has a big right to complain and to make sure that they comply with what they agreed with. Thank you.
Anybody else in the public care to speak? Mr. Barquette?
Just a couple of comments. Yeah, we knew what this property was like before we bought the property. We didn't know that we'd have to put in a turn lane that wasn't required by the standards. That's the first problem. The second problem is if there's no left turn lane, then the items mentioned by the first speaker are irrelevant. If we're not allowed to turn, if there's no left turns, then the items mentioned by the first speaker are irrelevant. Because if you can't make a left turn, then there's no traffic stacking up behind it. And if that's what the applicant is willing to do. Oh, the third point is we are willing to pay for the turn lane. We're going to put the money in, and when the county does the right-of-way, so the county will not be paying for the turn lane. If you accept our condition, we put the money up, we pay for the turn lane. When the county gets the right-of-way, we pay for the turn lane, just like we've always said we would do. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else in the public before I close public hearing? Okay, public hearing is closed. Chris, there's been, we're going to get into a situation now with opinions in traffic engineering as to whether or not this needs to exist or not. And if there is no left turn, and traffic is going down, whether they have to turn around or not, and the traffic, it sounds like coming off of 58th, whether it's with 500 students or 750, the numbers in the study have, I guess, been called into question. The real question now is it going to work? I mean, if there's no left turn lane and all the traffic has to come in from the right, whether it's 500 students or you move to 750 students, will the roadway handle the traffic? I think that's the key right now.
Well, when the original traffic study was done, it showed that the roadway would handle the traffic. Now, but that was with very few left turns predicted. If the left turn movement is prohibited with a sign and a police officer there to back it up, and then that eastbound traffic has to continue east and either make a left on 58th and U-turn to backtrack back that way, that would be a safe maneuver. There's a traffic signal at 4th and 58th, and that could be done. I doubt that anyone would make that mistake more than once or twice before they'd relearn their path to come from the east. Right. So we think that it would work.
I guess the only thing that would have to say is a little worrisome is this original traffic study, in lieu of what you just said when I asked you if his count was correct or not. I mean, will the numbers work based on? I mean, do we need Brian, like it or not, do we need numbers to back up this right turn lane, handling the extra numbers before we move on to phase 2?
Correct about the original study being done with buses. I remember that phase. Now we're doing autos.
The use that they used in the original study was the elementary land use, which is the elementary school land use, number 520 out of the trip generation manual. That includes public and private schools, and with private schools, it's anticipated that there's very little busing, if any. And if you look at the example that Mr. Brewster gave us, it says right on that land use 520 that the amount of busing varies considerably from site to site, because if you look at a lot of the elementary schools these days, the buses aren't very widely used. You know, a lot of them are arriving with 4 or 5 kids on them because a lot of parents like to drive their kids to school. So we think the numbers in the original study are accurate. It's hard to go out at their temporary site, do a driveway study, and say this is what the counts are going to be when they open on 4th Street, because as I mentioned, there are other uses on the Central Assembly site.
But not that many. And then we're only talking 433 students, whereas the actual use is going to be 750 students. So that's even giving him the benefit of the doubt using the 433 students.
But we think that the original traffic study was done correctly in accordance with the LDRs. It was approved. But again, we also feel that if the left turn was prohibited, that you would not have a problem.
I haven't really changed my opinion about the turn lane. I think they need a turn lane. I'm not sure I don't necessarily believe that they have to pay for the county right away for that turn lane, but that's me. But I think that they need the turn lane in as soon as they can put one in, or the county redoes 4th Street, or you get the right of way. I think by putting up the money, they're paying for the turn lane, not us. But the reality is I want to be sure that if the numbers and that traffic count is right, and we say no left turn lane, that the stacking, et cetera, will fit going the other way, as we say. And that's the one thing that, I guess that's the only real question I have, whether or not we have if there's any restudy or something that needs to be revamped or whatever that might, or whatever.
Staff doesn't feel that you would need to restudy it.
Okay,
because
that's what was my point.
It was set up that 99% of the traffic was coming from the east anyways.
Okay, and so you're sticking by the first study then?
That's correct.
Okay. Brian, did you want to add anything since you did the study?
Yeah, I would just, everything Mr. Moore said is absolutely correct as far as the ITE manual. It does account for, it studies a variety of sites, and the busing with each site does vary. At a previous meeting, we had talked about busing with Imagine School, and that busing was predicated based upon the principal's determination for the need for the site. They're talking about the stacking associated with the right turn lane. Mm-hmm. I would just refer you back to the site plan and look at the length of where the drop-off and pickup location is relative to the driveway connection to 4th Street. You'll notice that there's quite a bit of pavement.
On-site stacking.
On-site stacking. Right. It's not such as, I mean, for instance, Rosewood Elementary, where the pickup is in very close proximity, and when you drive by there during 3, it does stack out onto 16th, and because the stacking distance within the property itself is not that large. But I would point you back to the actual site plan and look at where the pickup is, and there's probably about 800 feet from the actual vehicular driveway connection of 4th Street is where the pickup location would be occurring. So you just don't have I don't want you to have the idea that you only have 300 feet of stacking distance associated with that right turn lane. You have the total driveway depth back into the site itself.
Let's see. Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
I have one question, Chris.
Oh, Donna, go ahead.
On 58th northbound, is there a left turn stacking lane there? The gentleman said there was no arrow for a left turn westbound. Is there?
There
a
are
stacking
left
lane?
turn lanes and traffic signalized arrows there. They rarely come up because the movement is so low and the left turn movement is so low, but they do exist there.
Thank you.
Barry?
Yeah, how many students do you anticipate walking to this school when it's located there? Do you have a number? You have some enrollment now. You must know where these people live. Will some students walk to this school? You have no numbers?
City guy.
And there's no bus, there'll be,
Gotta walk in.
won't be any buses at all, in other words? You don't anticipate any buses?
It's largely an operational question. I would defer to the principal on that. I wouldn't want anyone on this team to give a misrepresentation. The principal would give the best determination. I would also say the principal may not yet know, since they are out on 60 right now.
Well, he told us there were going to be buses.
No. I don't recall that he would ever have said that, because I don't think he could have known at the time.
Yeah,
but I don't have the record in
I
front of me.
remember at the meeting, he told us he was planning on busing.
Okay. I think that the way we do it,
It was also
generally
planned as a
speaking,
neighborhood school, too, so there'll be a lot of walking students.
generally speaking, and that's a good point. I think that, you brought up the sidewalk issue earlier. I think that the concern for the sidewalk, there are two things let me address. I think the concern for the sidewalk is that if you build it west, it just dead ends into that right of way, and that's it. The sidewalk ends right there. So even if we were to do that west, which wouldn't be too problematic, where does it go? And that's tough. The other thing, and everyone has agreed that walking down 4th Street where there is no sidewalk is quite dangerous. The other issue, though, with regards to the busing is generally what Imagine would do is the need is based on market demand. So if there's a demand from parents, most everything we do comes from a demand from parents. We react a lot based on need. And so even the design, the site plan layout of the school was adapted for need so that we could build this phase 2 quicker if the need was there. And I think that Principal Mills, up to this point, has determined that the parents have not requested busing, and so to this point they haven't needed it. That is not to say that in the future, if there were 600 or 700 students, that parents started requesting buses, that we couldn't have them. We have them at many of our other schools, so that's yet to be determined.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, the public hearing is closed. I'm open to a motion or to what we can do.
Well, one concern I have is if they decide to put the sign out there, no left turn, of course you're going to have a police officer there, hopefully a sworn police officer that will be able to issue citations. If that sign goes there, I don't want this to be some mindset that now we don't need a left-hand turn lane. So you understand, the left-hand turn lane, if I make a motion, or vote on a yes for this, there is going to be a left-hand turn lane sooner or later. So don't get into your mind that. Understood?
You have to have police officers there until you put a left turn lane, so it's costly to us to.
Thank you.
You know where I'm coming from.
I agree.
I'm sorry, I thought.
Well, I would make a motion to not approve it, but because I'm concerned about the sidewalks, how people are going to, if it's a neighborhood school, how you're going to get there. So sidewalks, bicycle paths, and I agree. I think left-hand turn is going to be. They promised to put one in, and they're not doing it.
Under the special exception they were given, they had to have a left-hand turn. I think that has to stand. Personal opinion.
You're just talking about changing the timing of it, though.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question for clarification? I keep hearing a reference to a sign that says no left turn. That's something that actually would have to be put up by the county, correct? We do not allow private residents to or businesses, in essence, to start dictating traffic flow on the streets.
They can do it under a right-of-way permit.
But we'd have to approve, I mean,
That's
what's
correct.
the
They'd have to
process
come
of
in.
that?
They'd have to come in with a permit, George, and design the sign that meets our standards, and then they could put it in under permit. But a sign is a minor expense. I mean, it's not a big.
Well, I guess I'm not concerned so much about the sign as I am, at what point do we allow residents, businesses to dictate traffic flow? I mean, it would seem to me that it's the county's decision whether there should be a left turn or not a left turn.
Right.
Because theoretically, you can make a left turn into the right-of-way and not enter the property. It's one thing for them to say, we're not going to allow people onto the property through a left turn lane. It's another to say that there's no left turn at all.
But in an issue involving safety, the county has the authority to prohibit certain movements.
Absolutely.
And we can have them put that in under our authority to our standards, so that the sign is the proper size, correct distance from the roadway, and that can be done under a permit. In fact, it's done quite often.
And one other point, Mr. Chairman, I know there are 5 members to the board here tonight under county regulations. Simple majority will not suffice as a recommendation.
It's 4.
You need to get 4 votes.
Right, you have to have 4 in favor of a motion to move
Yes.
forward. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm Jared, Donna?
No, go ahead.
Okay, do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
No.
Okay, this motion dies for lack of a second, so we're still under discussion. And/or if someone else has another motion.
I have a question about logistics on the sign that George just brought up the subject. Where will the sign go? Does it go in the middle of the road that says you can't turn left? Does it go on the right, the left? If it goes in the middle, how do we accommodate that?
As you're heading eastbound on 4th Street, the sign would be on the right-hand side as you're approaching the school driveway.
On the ditch side.
That's correct.
There's no way to put a small median in there.
No, there's no room for a median there.
Well, in their
But
right of way,
the sign could be designed
there might be enough room for a median because it's in front of their property, and they could, maybe that could be done.
No, you would, even if you put the median in, you still have to transition back to the west in order to create the
She's
space.
thinking more of a curb, kind of like in the front of it.
But I'm not too concerned about the sign being visible enough. We could put another one on the left side. We could make them larger. We could make the sign or design the sign to be big enough so that people would know that there's no left turn allowed there.
And appropriate road markings, striping on the roads also would help.
No, there is no road marking for a.
Well, could we put a double stripe down in that area would indicate you can't cross over?
You can cross a double left to make a turn.
Yeah, you can turn through that.
You can't pass, but you can make a turn. Yeah.
Well, when this project originally came up, I voted against it, and so did Dr. Baker, for the reasons that Dr. Baker just discussed. The traffic issue, the no sidewalks, 4th Street is not safe. I'm finding out now that the traffic study was done using busing, and there is no busing. So I'm still very concerned about that. However, the project has been approved. The concern that's in front of us right now is a left turn lane, not whether or not we think the project should be there or not. So, even though I voted against the project, I'm willing to just put blinders on, and we're just talking about the left turn lane here, and that's it. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What you're really talking about is the expansion of the project, it sounds like. If the left turn lane is not approved, they go to stay in Phase 1. And
Captured at Phase 1 until...
Right. Lenore?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say
The
that...
microphone on, Lenore?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Is it? Thank you. The projections for the school, I saw it on a memo today, was 175. And obviously, a lot of people in this community, once you gave the permission and said you would work with the school, they were excited because I believe what I saw was 455. I'm not sure if it's 435
It jumped considerably from the beginning, yeah. Right.
I don't think Imagine thought it was going to grow that fast, and certainly the school district didn't. But what you're seeing is a large number of families in this community are seeking, education the way they want it to be offered, that they want to be a part of. So, the left turn lane, I understand the safety there, but you definitely, in my opinion, as an individual board member, did the right thing, and 455 other parents think so. And I think it's going to go really fast to the 750 because of their K-8 philosophy. So,
I mean, that's part
I
of
know
the
you've hit a
dilemma.
bump
isn't it?
now, but it's a good bump,
That is the
because
dilemma.
these families have education that they've wanted for a long time and not had the opportunity for.
That is part of the dilemma about the fifth, rolling out a fifth into sixth, seventh, and eighth if it's not there. So anyway, I might stay with what I felt like, but you'll need to, someone else needs to come up with a motion, so if
And
anybody
let me
has
just say
one.
one other thing about buses, because what we see at our other schools also is, if you take Glendale, for example, that's really a neighborhood school, but a lot of parents will not put their kids on the buses.
They drive anyway.
When we looked at Citrus School and the fact that there were so many cars getting in there, and we couldn't get them off of 4th Street to get into Citrus, and should we buy the property next door, we actually contacted all the parents and said, you are eligible to ride the bus, will you ride the bus? And we were able to encourage some families to put their children back on the bus, but some parents are very leery about buses, and they don't really want their children on buses. So even, I don't remember if they said they were going to use buses or not, but even if they offered that, parents sometimes will not take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll tell you what. I'll jump in here.
All right. Wade on in.
Being the mild, meek, withdrawn person I am, I'm going to go ahead and recommend we approve this as with the recommendations of staff. And I just want to reiterate the understanding that there will be a left turn lane there.
So you're recommending that they put up the money and the left turn lane will be put in?
As staff recommendations.
Okay, staff recommends
What about
that buys the right-of-way as well.
What about the no left turn sign?
I think that would be a great interim fix. I would accept that as an addition to my motion.
Okay. Craig, are you talking, the staff recommendation is to put the left turn lane in with the, and purchase the right-of-way. Is that what you want them to purchase the right-of-way and cover the ditch and all of that, or you want the county to do it?
Now, as written right here, I just reread it. If somebody wants to argue with it, that's fine.
Okay, that's
Well,
fine.
I just wanted to point out, no offense intended, but it doesn't make any sense to prohibit a left turn lane and make us build it and buy the right-of-way. It doesn't make any sense for us to prohibit the turning movement, but require us to build the
Right, I
turn
mean, the
lane.
staff's recommendation.
Staff recommendation is
No, but Mr. Hamner asked you, do you want him to prohibit the left turn movement, and you said
The
yes. you
left
think that
turn
would be a good idea.
temporarily until you can
Temporarily.
put a left turn lane
Until
in. Left turn sign temporarily.
Go ahead and finish your motion. Is that, I mean, Craig, all right, so let me just make sure I understand them. Your motion is to support the staff recommendation, which is build the left turn lane as said to begin with, and
when required.
well, it's required when they've got the staff recommendation says 1 year later.
Right.
And then which means they have to purchase the right of way or cover the ditch.
Yeah, which amount are we going to have them put aside? The
Well,
purchase
that's
of the
what
right
I'm
of way
trying,
or
that's
the
why I want to be
culverting?
sure what which means they handle the right of way and the left turn lane. There would be no left turn until the left turn is built. And then the safety officer that was their choice. That was not in the staff recommendation.
Which I think is a good idea, but, everything's
it's not-
negotiable. Tell me what you don't like.
We will, just a minute. I'll just make sure I understand what it is. Okay, his motion is with staff recommendation and then no left turn lane while it's there, and that's basically covers his recommendation. Do I have a second? Okay, no second, that doesn't work. I would suggest that
Wait, let me tell you the only reason I didn't go with the
Okay.
second on that is because, staff, are you not asking us to make a determination whether or not they need to set aside money for purchasing right-of-way versus the amount they need to set aside for building culvert?
What staff's recommendation is that they have to build it within a year.
and they have to go buy the right of way.
They could buy the right-of-way, they could culvert the canal, whichever way affords them the ability to build it within a year. That's the option they would have to price out, do the engineered cost estimate, and get us that amount of money secured.
Charlie, sit down. Thank you.
Excuse me.
We're closed.
Item B in the staff report reflects the costs, and it's the higher of the two. So item B in the recommendation is the higher of those two costs.
So you're still saying they have to do it within a year, whereas I think what we're looking at here is like 13 years out.
No, the recommendation, the staff recommendation is that you put up the money, you put up the money for the left turn lane and/or build it within a year, but you have to get the right-of-way. The staff, the county's not going to go get the right-of-way. You've got to go get the right-of-way in order to do it or agree to cover the canal.
They have to put up 115% of the higher
Imagine
of the two.
schools. That's what staff's recommendation is. The county doesn't spend anything on anything, including the right-of-way that's necessary for 4th Street to put in the road, as I understood it. That's why.
So basically, what you're saying is they've got to put in the right-of-way. I mean, they've got to do
put in
this
left
within
turn
a year
lane
anyway.
within a year.
And they're saying they can't afford to do that.
Well, they have to go buy the right-of-way. And that's what the difference is. The only difference from a discussion standpoint, my problem with the whole thing was that I'm not sure we should require them to buy the right-of-way. I think we should require them to put in a left turn lane, but the county needs to be dealing with the right-of-way on 4th Street in total, because they're going to have to deal with it anyway. And it's not, I don't think that's Imagine Schools' responsibility. I think it's a county issue.
I'm not even sure Imagine Schools can, because we'd have to do a condemnation process if the owner didn't want to sell it, wouldn't we?
The point is that I think Imagine should put up the money for the left turn lane. As soon as the county gets the right of way and wants to do it, they've got the money, they can put the left turn lane in. And I happen to think that I like the idea of no left turn until that left turn lane gets in. It may be 1 year or 10 years. And they keep a safety officer there 1 year or 10 years until that gets put in. But they have to put the money up for the turn, so it's not county people. But I don't think that they should be required to spend the money on the right of way. I think that's not right. But I think they should be able to have to do everything else, and that's what basically they agreed to begin with. And that's what I'm in favor of.
John, are you hard over on the putting up the money for the right-of-way? Is the staff?
That would be consistent with county policy as far as the way we've done things with others, is that when it's a site-related improvement, the applicant bears the cost or the burden of the entire improvement. So and as of right now, it's really an undetermined amount, because as the right-of-way,
I was just reiterating that's my position, because it's a standard procedure.
Okay. Can I try this?
You can try that.
Okay.
Go ahead. We'll try one more. If we don't get a motion, we just don't have.
Let's just see if it works.
Go ahead.
All right. I'd like to make a motion that we approve this with the applicant, according to staff's recommendation, with the applicant paying for the design, the permitting, paying for the right-of-way acquisition as a reimbursement to the county once the county gets the right-of-way, because they can't condemn, and the construction costs. We put in a no left turn sign until that left turn lane is in. We have a safety officer until that left turn lane is in, and that's it.
That's your motion?
May I ask just two questions? The first, based on your recommendation, staff seems to suggest that it is possible either to do it through right-of-way or do it through piping, the idea of adding this turn lane. I heard from the applicant that their engineer says that's not possible. Chris, is it possible to do it that way? Who's correct on this?
Well, according to the applicant, and this is the first time that we've seen their plan here. According to the applicant, even if they culvert the canal, they still have to acquire a portion of right-of-way, and that could be true. I don't dispute that, because we haven't seen these plans yet. But yeah, it looks as if from their alignment here that they would have to acquire some right-of-way in either scenario.
But that's something you need to look at.
Do we need to table this until you have an opportunity to do that?
What I heard you, and what I understand but do we have a second to this motion?
I'll second that motion so we can discuss and we can refine it.
All right, because what I understand, Donna, is that you have said that the county has to acquire the necessary right-of-way. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, Imagine Schools has to put up enough money for the design of the left turn lane. And then after the county acquires the right-of-way or pipes and does whatever is necessary, then Imagine Schools has to reimburse the county for what is necessary to build this for their left turn lane.
Yes.
But it's the county's responsibility to go get the right-of-way and deal with the right-of-way and provide the right-of-way. Until that point in time, Imagine Schools does not have to put up any money. Is that correct? Because they don't know what amount to deal with.
Find them out somehow, won't we?
I mean, that's what they don't have an amount to deal with. And what I gathered from the staff is the county didn't want to have to do that.
Yeah.
Right. I don't see that.
I mean, that's that was part of the problem here, is the county doesn't want to go get the right-of-way. They want Imagine to go get the right-of-way. And I'm not...
Their school, their problem.
And that's why I was having a problem with it.
Okay, so that motion dies for lack of a second.
Well, you have a second.
I seconded it so we could go ahead and discuss it. If you want to revise that...
I don't think it's going anywhere, but that's...
If you want to revise that elimination,
If you're willing to take back your second, I'll take back my motion.
Okay, it'll die.
Okay.
Motion is hence removed. We're getting there.
Okay, how about, I make a motion, we table this until staff comes up with an agreement and has time, an opportunity to look at the engineering. Table to time certain.
You know, one thing that I thought that the collecting of the data.
We have a motion. Does anybody want to second that, or should we just continue discussion?
Is there another motion?
No motion, no second, so we'll continue discussion.
Motion and dies.
We'll continue the discussion. Go ahead, excuse me.
We're going to work this out, believe it or not.
If I could, I would like to note that this has been advertised for the board's consideration on the 16th of this month, just in an effort to get the applicant to a decision point as quick as possible. So,
right. Okay.
Got that, so if we table it,
Richard, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was concerned about the data that they collected out at the church. You know, I mean, that's real data. The other is modeling, right? The data that you're getting is a modeling system.
Well,
and that's pretty terrifying, actually, to see that many cars come roaring into that place, and it's only half built. So I think we have a real problem here with that site. I could probably go along with your original motion and second that if you wanted to bring that up again.
The dilemma is that, and this is why I keep asking Chris about his study, is that we do have this new count from the school, but I mean, and I keep asking him if he's comfortable, because what we're talking about is a left turn lane with traffic going from west to east on 4th, and if in fact we say no left turn, great. I mean, they're talking about under 35 cars an hour based on based on the original study. So we don't know demographically. It appears that most of the cars, regardless of the left turn lane, are coming from the east. So it sounds like the concern now is not so much the left turn lane, it is the stacking and the feeding from the east of all the cars for 750 students. So now I don't know that, but based on what Brian says, there is 800 feet going in. There's a huge amount of stacking, which is, if you look at schools, that's important too. But the point is that I guess from the left turn lane is, do we need to make them make the left turn lane or not? And that's what they've requested.
There is one other option.
Wait a minute, before we go, Brian, I'm sorry, I've closed public hearing. Yes, sir. And unless somebody wants to open it in a minute, we have questions for y'all, then I'll consider that.
Keep it closed, you're good.
So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I hear, and I hear the bike path, but I tend to agree. The bike path goes out to the west and stops. If you remember, the traffic from the footpath was supposed to come out of the northwest corner from the neighborhood, because they didn't want to be on 4th. They were going to come in back here. I believe in bike paths and I believe in sidewalks, but until the county deals with the rest of 4th Avenue, you know, it's kind of that you can have them pave in front of theirs, and we have these little connections going along. But the problem is the west side of 4th Avenue and right-of-way, and it's going to continue to be a problem until the county does whatever they're going to do. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to 4th. So
the other option we have is just to stick with what was originally done, that they cannot go to phase 2 without the left turn lane. That's it.
And that's an option. But the reality is what I heard him say, and the reason I keep bringing this up, is that 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grades, if they've got 433 students, they have a decision to make, and they can't go to phase 2 because of our planning. They can't go 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade till they do phase 2, and they have nowhere to roll their kids. And that's even if we say, okay, look, we're going to change the numbers. We go 350 in the first 1 through 5, and then the other numbers go up 5, 6, 7, and 8, which we can't do anyway. But they don't have a rollover. So that's why I keep thinking we're kind of hard to stop the flow here. But
yeah,
there are people that don't want the turn lane. There are people, that don't want to see this happen because it puts an onus on the school and it slows down traffic. And I understand that, but that's, to me, as a follow through. That's why I feel like that. What I would do is close the lane. I would make them put up the money. I'd put a safety officer out there, and it may be 10 years, but make the county go on and deal with 4th Avenue. And that's why I keep saying that, because they're going to have to deal with it anyway.
And eventually you can get a real count, instead of estimated traffic count, if the left lane is necessary.
When it triggers, and right now they're saying it's not true. The left turn lane is there because of us.
Right.
We thought it was necessary.
And obviously, the numbers have proven that it is necessary.
Well, that's what I asked Chris, and Chris keeps saying they're not. And and if the numbers, and Craig says the formula's broken every time it comes up. So but the reality is will all those cars fit from the east to the west, turning in that right turn lane into that school for 750 students? Because that's what I hear. That's what I hear. The question is now, not a left turn lane.
Reality is, I think, while I have some problems with staff's recommendation, I think they have done their homework. I'm going to reissue my motion to accept staff's recommendation as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is
with the addition of the no left turn sign.
As he said, staff's recommendation
I'm going
as
to
presented.
stick with staff's recommendation. I'm going to make it as simple as possible.
I mean, which means it's kind of a moot point.
It doesn't
Bruce would be
matter.
right. There's no need for that. They have to figure out how they're going to make this turn lane. I probably won't support it, but that's the left. There's probably no need for no left turn if you're going to make them build this thing in a year. If they can get it built. If not, you stop. If not, they have to stop.
If I could add one thing, even with staff's recommendation, if it got to be a safety problem, the county could enforce the left turn prohibition on their own.
They can. I just don't. The only part of this that I really, on the staff's recommendation, that I have the biggest heartburn with, is trying to make that school go by right of way in an area where people don't want to sell it, or people don't want to deal with it, and you all don't even want to deal with it, but you're going to make them deal with it. And I don't think that's fair. That's as simple as that.
I agree with that.
So I'm not going to vote for the motion, but we have a motion. All right. Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, it's 3-2. Now, that means we got to have Jerry, me, and Donna. So we got a 3-2 and no other, which means we're kind of at an impasse.
It just means the status quo that right now that before they can CO phase 2, they need to put in the turn lane.
Right. I mean, this stays where it is. Basically, that passes by default, which
that's exactly right.
I think that hopefully the minutes will reflect that. I think when this hits the Board of County Commissioners, they're going to have to consider this. Because I think that we've got an impasse that I think is not fair for this school at all.
It can stand the way it is and still go to the board.
Well, no, that's the way it is. I mean, that's it. We're done.
I mean, that's
okay. Any other thoughts? And if not, we move on. It's a good discussion, people, and I'm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Welcome to America.
It goes from just for those in the audience. This leaves us and goes to the Board of County Commissioners, and it's published for the 16th.
For the 16th, correct.
They'll have the final say so.
I would like the minutes to show that I voted against this because I do not think that the applicant can get the right of way. I think the county needs the condemnation process to get this right of way.
I voted against it because I didn't think it was fair to the applicant, and I agree with Donna. And Jerry?
I voted the same reason against it, because I didn't think it was fair to the applicant. It would be impossible to get that right away. And until they could demonstrate a need for a left turn lane more specifically after the school's built, we can readdress it.
Right. Thank you all for coming out. But next, you're welcome to stay. No one has to leave. Rush off. We're only moving into the next item, which is Commissioners' Matters, of which, anybody have any matters?
Well, I've got one right now. I am very, very upset at this traffic issue. If 520 says we had 15 trips at peak hour and somebody counts 306 trips for this same use, we have a problem with 520, and if the usage is changing where people don't use buses, we've got to change the numbers in 520 to reflect that. And I would like something to happen on that now.
Okay, it's duly noted, and Chris Moore is gone, but we hear you.
No, he's not. He came back.
Did you hear that, Chris? Okay.
Chris,
all right.
What is the next? What's the next process? What's the next step to do something about this? We can't deal with this. This is ridiculous.
Across the same problem.
The model's broken.
Well, I think whenever we have a discrepancy over the trip generation rates that are in the manual and that are allowed under our land development regulations, we have to look at existing sites to see exactly what the rates are, and perhaps even do some traffic counts at existing schools. Look at how the buses are being used. Are they being utilized fully, or are they only coming in with sparse numbers of students on them? But that's something that we can look at internally with staff to see if we've got a better rate to use. Maybe the rates are out of date. But you got to remember, these ITE rates are taken over hundreds and hundreds of sites over dozens of years, and they're averages. You could have some lower, could have some higher, but they're not random. They're averages. And
why can't we use the numbers that have been determined that apply to our county and how our students use the avenues that they have to get to school, be it bus, be it bike, be it walk, be it mom and dad's car? And we all know that mom and dad are scared to death to put their kid walking to school on the street. I don't know why they're scared to put them on a bus, but...
Well, and we've done that in the past with other land uses. We've looked at contractors, trade sites, things
in
like
order,
that.
In order to move this ahead, Chris, let me ask you a question. We have a transportation element coming up in a discussion with the Board of County Commissioners Friday week. I think it's a Friday week. Wouldn't this fall, some of this discussion fall within what we do within the transportation element?
Exactly. And that's something that could be brought up if there are specific uses that you feel that the rates are out of whack or need to be looked at. That's something the staff can look at.
That's why it's so important.
And may I have a recommendation from you at that meeting, at the workshop, on how to fix this specific issue?
Sure.
Thank you.
I agree. You got real data here, and the modeling is
the problem with
obviously broken.
Richard, the problem with the data is that it's not accurate data. Right. It appears to be very close, and it was worrisome. I mean, I said it was worrisome, but it's not accurate.
Well, I think they should go back and collect some more then, and find out where these people are. I mean, he said that some of the radio stations, some with the daycare center. I mean, the county should figure out which is.
But that's exactly why we would want to look at multiple sites. We don't want to just hone in on one and say,
here
this
got
is
a good example.
Right. But again, it's not just the school that's there. There's other uses. We would want to study many schools and look at many sites so that we get a good representation, not just hone in on one.
And I think we need to fine-tune it by type of school: elementary, middle, and high school.
And you might want to consider the weather also.
Mr. Moore and Donna, you've now come to the idea that this might need some tweaking on this formula. Remember up on 66 and the one trip south on US 1, and that's what keyed me into something was wrong? Mm-hmm. This is the same thing. It's a special issue. It's a special condition. We need to make arrangements for these special conditions that don't match the model.
If y'all hadn't done it, and it's a wonderful reading and sleeping material, is to read the transportation element, and we've got a long day on a Friday week. We've got 3 of the big elements we're going to be discussing in the workshop. So,
and you need to read all of that.
Yeah. So, Chris, thank you. Any other commissioner matters? If not, planning matters? John?
I just have one. In addition to the regular development items we're going to bring to you on the 25th, we're going to attempt to bring you 4 long-range planning items, and those are some of the lighter elements of the comprehensive plan evaluation appraisal report, and those are items like the potable water planning, recreation and open space, intergovernmental coordination, and the capital improvements element. So you should see those in your packet when you get the packet for your upcoming meeting of the 25th.
In the intergovernmental relations, are we going to have the agreement outlined in there? No, probably not. Okay.
I had a point. This is a workshop that we're doing on the 19th, right?
These items will come to you on the 25th. I believe it was the meeting that Mr. Hamner was talking about on the 19th. That will be a more substantive element, which I believe is transportation.
Yeah,
well, all 3.
Yeah,
I think it's transportation.
But then there's going to be a
land
public
use element.
Land use.
Then there's a public hearing after that at the PNC.
Not that day. It's our next meeting after our next meeting is what he's talking about, the one on the 26th.
25th.
So these elements will.
And these
the
4
workshop is on the 19th.
Yes.
And then we're having, at a regular meeting, there'll be a public hearing on these same issues, these same elements.
These will be public discussion items, and they'll be similar to your workshop.
John, what he's talking about is from the 19th. will our meeting encompass transportation, land use? Will it encompass all three of those elements at our very next meeting? And I didn't think that was the case.
No, that's not the case.
They come up later.
They will come up later. It'll be 4 different elements that you'll get at the 25th, which will be...
25th, I'm sorry, I keep saying the 25th.
Which will be lighter elements.
So the big issues, those big elements, they take a while. We go through, we may even have another workshop. They've had the transportation and the land use. There was one other, but those are
Conservation.
It was conservation. Those are the three probably the big ones, and they take a while. They're not going from the 19th to our meeting, no. That the public hearing on them will occur later. I mean, there'll be public discussion, so it is considered a public meeting.
It is a public meeting, it's not a public hearing.
On the 19th. Yeah.
That's correct.
So if people have thoughts, they'll be encouraged to listen, and I assume they'll be allowed to speak. I don't remember any time they weren't. But,
on the 16th, with the Board of County Commissioners, they're going to be discussing our mining moratorium.
Right.
They're going to have a busy meeting.
They're going to come up, and I had told them I'll take our recommendations and be there. Any of you all are welcome to be there. We'll present them to them. If they have questions, we'll try and answer them as best we can as how our discussion went. And, any backup is allowed, that'd be good. Attorneys' matters?
Not tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We stand adjourned.